ॐ नमामि धन्वन्तरिम् आदिदेवं सुरासुरैर्वन्दितपादपद्मं लोके जरारुग्भयमृत्युनाशं दातारमीशं विविधौषधीनां ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste everybody. I welcome you all to the third session of this series, The Science of Surgery in Ayurveda and its relevance in the current times. So, the topic for today's session will be focusing on general principles of Ayurveda concerning Rachana Sharira, that is the human anatomy. So, for any surgical skill or surgical knowledge, that is the Shalya Shastra, the first important prerequisite for that Vidyarthi is the knowledge of the anatomy or the knowledge of the human body. So now we know that according to the Vaidika Shastra, we also believe and opine that the human body is the outcome of self with its path of development determined and influenced by the deeds of Purva Janma. So Purva Janma Krita Papa or Punya, the Karma Phala of our previous Janmas play a very important role in how this physical entity or the human abode develops in the current Janma. Ayurveda believes that the body is made up of Panchamahabhuta, that is the Prithvi, Jala, Teja, Vayu and Akasha, and the representatives of these Panchamahabhuta are the Tridoshas, that is the Vata, Pitta and the Kapha. These three forces can be explained as those that tend to produce motion in a human body at rest, or it is those that tend to produce a change of motion in a body, that which is moving. So these forces are further responsible for functions which affect the material composition of the body and determine its mass, which is the balance of the process of waste on one hand and those of assimilation on the other. It could be related to the functions which subserve the process of reproduction, which is essentially the detachment of a part endowed with the powers of developing into an independent whole. It could also be the functions by virtue of which one part of the body is able to exert some influence either directly or indirectly on another part of the body by its whole, and it also becomes a source of motion. So thus, if we consider these three types of functions, then they can be named as sustentative, the second could be generative, and the third variety what we saw as the kind of function could be for correlative functions. So this basic knowledge with respect to the different varieties of function like sustentative or generative or correlative. So this knowledge according to Ayurveda is in concern with the Vata, Pitta and the Kapha, and this was acknowledged by the Ayurveda Shastra or the Ayurveda science from the concepts of Veda. So if we among the four Vedas, though Acharyas claim that Ayurveda is the Upaveda of the Atharvana Veda, Rig Veda forms the basic foundation stone out of all the other forms of Veda to a number of knowledge source in the Ayurveda. So Rig Veda tells us a number of concepts in Ayurveda, so like various disorders, treatment aspects, body's composition, etc. Many knowledge source has also been derived from the Rig Veda and also the Atharvana Veda. So according to Rig Veda, we have the greatest three devatas which form one of the main entities reigning the universe, that is the Indra, Agni and the Soma. Ayurveda also terms the same but in a different sequence as Soma, Surya and Anila, that is the Vayu. Visarga adana vikshepaihi Soma, Surya, Anila yatha dharayanti jagaddeham Kapha, Pitta, Anilastata. So they have the Ayurveda Acharyas have compared this Vata, Pitta and Kapha to Soma, Surya and Anila, just like how these three are very important factors that help in the functioning of the universe. In the same way, for the human body, the Vata, Pitta and the Kapha are like the Soma, Surya and the Anila to form or to perform the function of Deha Dharana. This means that the body is nothing but the congregation of mainly the Tridoshas. Doshomayam hi Shariram is what Acharyas says. So in Atharvana Veda, there are references concerning anatomical and physiology, disease processes, treatment of number of diseases, and some are also very relevant systematic knowledge regarding various concepts of Ayurveda have also been are also to be seen, not to be mentioned, are also to be seen, which are derived from the Veda as the content of Ayurvedic knowledge and perspective also. So after Vedic period, there were two main important medical schools of thought. One was the Atraya Sampradaya and the other was the Dhanvantari Sampradaya, which we saw in the previous sessions. Whereas Charaka followed the Atraya school of thought, he developed further the cult of Vaidyas or the physicians, whereas Acharya Sushruta followed the Dhanvantari Sampradaya or the Dhanvantari school of thought, and they focused more on the bodily anatomy and surgery, and they developed into group of surgeons. So this shows that our ancient medical science had not only conservative management of looking up to the diseases or the body physiology, etc., but it also had both intervention school of medicine too. That is the Atraya and the Sushruta Sampradaya. So these two schools of thought further developed at every subsequent generation, and they gave a sound and logical footing for fundamentals of Ayurveda. Later, the scattered material available in the Veda and these schools of thought, they were compiled in a systematic way, and we have knowledge on the various portions of Ayurveda which we already have discussed as the Ashtanga of Ayurveda, that is, which includes the Kaya Chikitsa, that is the medicine, Shalya Tantra, the surgery, Shalakya Tantra with diseases and medicine pertaining to the ear, nose, throat, and also the eye, that is ophthalmology, Kaumara Bhritya for pediatrics, Agata Tantra for toxicology, Bhuta Vidya mainly for if we have to see, which involves a lot of Daiva Vyapashraya Chikitsa, and also for psychiatry basically, Rasayana for science of rejuvenation, and Vajikarana as the science of aphrodisiacs. So Ayurveda Shastra, it accepts or derives certain principles and concepts through the other schools of thought, like the Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Yoga, wherein these various philosophies, they also deal with the process of creation from different point of view. So all of them have been derived from the Veda, and they were a strong foundation part of the Vedic system in understanding the nature, the process of creation, etc. So those principles which do not base themselves upon the Veda, they were called as non-Vedic principles. But when we have a adhyayana of the Ayurveda Shastra, we get to see that Ayurveda is basically has its derivatives from the Vedika Shastra only. So a few of the main schools of thoughts from which Ayurveda has a close association is of the Nyaya, the Vaisheshika, and the Sankhya and the Yoga, wherein the principles are drawn parallelly and also very, very closely. In Ayurveda, the term Purusha is given to the living body that is comprising of the 5 Panchamahabhuta, the Prithvi, Jala, Teja, Vayu and Akasha, along with the Atma. So the combination of these 5 elements and the Atma is what is called as the Chikitsa Adhikrita Purusha, that is in the living entity wherein Chikitsa can be done. That is, Chikitsa is one of the main focus or prayojana or main part of the Shastra. So the combination of all of these five along with Atma is what Ayurveda opines as Purusha, in whom the treatment can be done or the Kriya Vishesha can be initiated. The next concept, very important concept under the Rachana Sharira, that is the science of anatomy, is the term called as Sharira. So while Acharyas define Sharira, Charaka has specifically said that human body is nothing but it is a tripod of three essential factors, that is Sattva, Atma and Sharira. Acharya says Sattva Atma Shariram cha Trayameta Tridandavat. That is, when all these three factors unite, only then the body survives and it possesses all essentials of life. That is, Lokas Tishtati Samyogat Sarva Tatra Pratishthitam. So according to Ayurveda, any material which regularly degenerates or destroys itself is termed as Sharira. Shiryate iti shariram. So in other words, if we have to say, Sharira can be termed as an object which at all the times is in a process of constant destruction. That is Shiryate. Shiryate hinasti Atmanam iti shariram. So it is well known fact that because of anabolic and catabolic processes that happen in our body, it's a continuous functional phenomena which regularly takes place in the living body. So this catabolic process is the destructive process, and therefore the term Sharira is a proper term given to the living body by the ancient anatomists. Next, moving on to the term Sharira. So the science of medicine which deals with the scientific principles of anatomy and physiology both have been recognized by Ayurveda Shastra with the term Sharira. So this is why even in Sushruta Samhita and the Charaka Samhita, wherein in both the Samhitas the terms for the chapter concerning to this particular science, it is concerning to normal anatomy or the physiology of the human body, they have been collectively coined under one sthana, that is the Sharira sthana. So in Sanskrit, the term Sharira has also been explained as Sharirika bhavam adhikritya kruto adhyayah Shariraha. Ayurveda Shastra, it believes that a physician must have both practical knowledge and practical knowledge of principles of anatomy and physiology, along with a detailed understanding of the human morphology too. So only then the acharyas opine that a Vaidya, or he can become a competent physician. So Acharya Charaka has further added that a competent physician is always a versatile scholar of human anatomy and physiology, and only such scholar can deliver beneficial medical services to the ailing society. Shariram sarvata sarvam sarvada vedayobhishak. Ayurvedasa Karsnena Veda Loka Sukhapradam. So this simple shloka is enough for us to realize the importance or the stress Ayurveda Shastra has given to the study of human anatomy and the human physiology, which forms the basis for any medical learning even in the current times, whereas very many people out there do not know that Ayurveda Shastra has incorporated knowledge of human anatomy and physiology. So many people think that Ayurveda Acharyas, Ayurveda Vaidya did not have any knowledge about the human anatomy or the human physiology, and it was just the practice of the medicine that followed through generations as based on symptoms, only merely symptomatology, or based on only disease process, etc. But it is truly disheartening and disappointing that the Shastra which originated in India has been diluted so much in the current times that many people out there in our own country are unaware of the depth of medical knowledge that pertained and that was being studied in our universities like Nalanda, Takshashila, etc., wherein many people from China, etc., they had to travel with many hurdles and difficulties to reach our universities to gain this knowledge of the ultimate knowledge of human body science. So according to Ayurveda Shastra, the process of organogenesis. So it is mainly managed by the role of Panchamahabhuta and their representatives, that is the Tridosha, that is the Vata, Pitta and the Kapha. So the physiological role of Tridosha, that is the Vata, Pitta and Kapha, the process of Dhatu, the functions of the Dhatu, that is the tissue formation, and also the significance of excretory system or the excretory process tells us very clearly that this human body is basically a product, or it is something that has great influence on the dosha, dhatu and the mala. So in this series, we will be briefly looking upon certain contexts in Rachana Sharira, like the Dhamani Sharira, Kala Sharira, Mamsa Peshi Sharira, Asti Sharira, Sandhi Sharira, etc. Like for example, the concept of embryology, the Garbha Sharira, the concept of angiology, wherein it is dealt as Dhamani Sharira, the concept of lymphatics and its system, the Lasika or the Lasika Vahasrotas, the concept of integumentary system, that is the Tvak Sharira, wherein it also incorporates the anatomy of the Nakha, that is the nail, and the Loma. We also have anatomy in relating to the Koshta, Koshtanga and the Ashayas, which are nothing but the body cavities like the thoracic cavity, abdominal cavity and the organs that are lodged in these cavities. Osteology, Asti Sharira. Arthrology, we have the Sandhi Sharira. The anatomy of the ligaments and tendons, that is the Snayu Sharira. We also have anatomy pertaining to the limiting membranes, which are called as the under the heading of Kala Sharira, the muscular system, the Peshi Sharira, and we also have explanations in the in the Uttara Tantra of Sushruta Samhita under the Shalakya Vibhaga of the Ashtanga Ayurveda, wherein we have the anatomy of all the sensory organs of the body, with which we can call as the Indriya Sharira. We also have the main focus or highlight called as the Marma Sharira, which are vulnerable points in our body, which are the source of prana. So this is even which forms the basic knowledge of certain art forms like Kung Fu, etc., which focuses more on these Marma Sharira, wherein these Marma are points which could lead to betterment or worsening of a condition, which could also lead to worst cases like even up to death. So we have the knowledge of Marma Sharira. What are Marmas? Where are these anatomical points of Marma located in our body? Everything is being detailed explained by Acharyas, especially Acharya Sushruta, under the heading Marma Sharira. So under the Sharira Sthana, so even in Charaka and in Sushruta and in Ashtanga Hridaya, so the Sharira Sthana basically it focuses and deals about these basic concepts of first how to understand the creation, how do we correlate the origin of this human body, how the Panchamahabhutas, the Triguna, etc., everything, the Mahat Tattva from the Avyakta, everything, how the Prakriti, the Moola, until the Moola Prakriti. Then we try to correlate this existence of human body with various pramanas, taking the help of various pramanas and trying to understand the human body. And then it moves to the understanding of the physical entity of the human body as under the following headings, which we saw now as the Dhamani Sharira, Asti Sharira, etc. So briefly looking upon each of these and its relevance to modern surgical anatomy or the modern anatomical knowledge. Starting with the Dhamani and the Sira Sharira, that is in the modern by the modern anatomists, it is called as the vascular anatomy or angiology. So in human body, the movement and exchange of materials is possible only with the help of watery medium of living tissues. So for this purpose, the nature has provided us with the beautiful system, that is the vascular system. In Ayurveda, we call it as the Raktavaha Samsthana or the Raktavaha Srotas. That is the circulatory system as the whole. So within this system, we have the Rakta Dhatu, which has been considered as Dhatu by Acharya Charaka, and Dosha both dosha and dhatu by Acharya Sushruta, because many times we have the vyadhi that which gains its course or root in the human body because of the Rakta Dushti. So Rakta is that entity which is both the dhatu and the dosha, according to Acharya Sushruta. So it maintains all the chemical processes, chemical traffic which we can say throughout the human body, and it helps in the movement of various either the oxygen, the nutrition, the antibodies, the hormones, etc., everything with through this Raktavaha Samsthana, that is the circulatory system. So it also is an entity or an abode which carries toxins in the blood when the excretory mechanism of the body has been hampered. So this Raktavaha Samsthana in the body has great responsibility of circulating large volume of blood, and it also has to maintain the mechanical properties of the heart, that is the functions of the hridaya, the functions of the arteries and the vein. All of these are in direct relation with the integrity of the Raktavaha Samsthana. In Ayurveda, the Raktavaha Srotas has a major component of Dhamani, and Dhamani is something which carries the Parinama Prapta Dhatu, that which we can say the nutrients towards the body for the nutrition of other dhatus, that is nothing but for the nutrition of other tissues in the body. So these arteries which are carrying blood from a pumping heart, it pulsates to the force of the moving blood. So Acharya Sushruta also has clearly identified this pulsation and in a Dhamani, and he has said that Dhamani is something which has which is a nalika with a pulsating property or dhamana property. So in Ayurveda, the definition of Dhamani is as follows: Dhamanyat Dhamani, Dhamyate Uchvasita Kriyate Poshyateva Shariram Ya Abhista Dhamanyah. So this means that the vessel which pulsates and the vessel that carries nutrition towards other body tissues is Dhamani. So in this reference, if we see that, not a direct correlation, but we could probably understand that Acharya Sushruta with this explanation is trying to talk about the arteries or those vessels that move from the heart towards the periphery for supplying pure oxygenated blood to the other tissues of the body. Acharya Charaka also was of the opinion that we have 10 number of dhamanis that are originating from the Hridaya Bhaga moving towards various part of the Sharira. Certain few acharyas also opined that the utpatti of these dhamani was from the Nabhi Pradesha, which we could say that these vessels are something that were observed or that were described with respect to the embryonic level, and wherein which focused more on the fetal circulation that happens or that happened through the umbilical artery and the umbilical vein. Acharyas, after explaining about the Utpatti Sthana of the Dhamani, they give us the exact number also about the course of the Dhamani and also the number of branches of these Dhamani. And they say that out of the arteries that are arising from the Nabhi Pradesha, so 10 are directed upwards, 10 downwards and 4 obliquely. Tasam tu khalu Nabhi Prabhavanam Dhamaninam Urdvaga Dasha cha Adhogadamanyah Chatasra Tiryagaha. So this is the explanation given by Acharya Sushruta in the Sharira 9th chapter in the 4th verse of the chapter. So then he enumerates saying Urdvagaha Shabdas Pasha Ruparasagandha Prashvasa Uchvasa Jrumbita Kshudita Kathita Ruditani cha Visheshani Abhivahantyah Shariram Dharayanti, and the shloka further continues with other explanations of the divisions of the Dhamani in other further 5 to 6 lines. So if we have to say that these are the arteries that are going upwards and are related with the functions like the Shabda, that is the voice, Sparsha, touch, Rupa, vision, Rasa, taste, Gandha, smell, inspiration, expiration, the action of yawning, sneezing, laughing, etc. So if these vessels having reached the heart, when if it is said that each of them divide into three branches, that thus it total becomes 30 in number. So out of these 30, the 5 pairs are formed to carry the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Rakta and the Rasa, and the 4 pairs are formed to carry the sense of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha. Sorry, the Shabda, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha. And we have the 6 pairs that are formed for the function of speech, feelings, sleep, awakeness, lacrimation and lactation. Trying to understand the same with modern anatomical knowledge, we could probably think that Acharya was referring to all of these dhamani, to the internal auditory artery as the sound carrying vessels, central retinal artery for the sense of vision, lingual artery for the sense of taste, sphenopalatine branch of the internal maxillary artery for the sense of smell, laryngeal artery for the sense of sound, sublingual artery again for the sense of speech, lacrimal artery for lacrimation, mammary artery for lactation, etc. So if this could be the comparison for the arteries moving in the upward direction. So there are also explanation on the arteries that are moving in the downward direction, which are helping in the downward flow of the flatus, the feces, the urine, the semen and the menstrual blood, and also 2 running towards the intestine, 2 reaching the bladder, 2 are meant to produce semen, whereas in females they help in menstruation. We have the dhamani attached to the large intestine, serving the channels for fecal matter, etc. All of these explanations have been given. So a probable correlation again of the same could be of Annavaha dhamani, referring to the superior mesenteric and the branch of the celiac arteries, Mutravaha dhamani, the renal arteries, for producing shukra, that is the semen, that is in male we have the testicular and the cremasteric arteries, and in female arteries supplying to the ovary and the uterus, the uterine and the ovarian arteries. For discharging the semen, we have the arteries supplying the epididymis, ductus deferens, seminal vesicles and the prostate glands. For evacuation of the mala, the inferior mesenteric artery, middle colic and the right colic arteries could be the probable correlation of how Acharya was trying to explain the Urdhvaga and the Adhoga dhamanis with respect to its functions. So we now know that with all of these, we also find references of how Acharya Sushruta has also tried to explain the structure of the arterial wall, and he says it through the following shloka: Yata swabhavatah khani mrunaleshu biseshu cha dhamaninam tatha khani raso yehi upachiyate. So here this means that the dhamani have pores in their sides, that is the arterial wall, through which they ooze out the rasa. That to be could be precisely correlated to the lymph or the chyle throughout the body tissues. So these pores are present like the pores in the stem of the lotus, and the walls of the arteries have minute pores from which they convey the material which are applied over the surface of the skin, like for example lepa, ointments, all of these, taila, grita, etc. All of these, the active principles in these are moved into the body. It is through these channels, or it moves until the level of rakta dhatu because of these channels. And we have the terminal branches of the arteries, which are entering into which are muscular arterioles entering into the muscle layers, and the larger and the smaller arteries which are lined by the flattened endothelial cells. And in all of these setup or the apparatus, we have the nutritional need in the of the vessel, which happens by the process of diffusion. So therefore we get to know with Acharya's references and quotes on shloka that Acharya Sushruta was trying to actually explain this by giving an example of the lotus stalk with minute pores to support the permeability theory of the capillaries and the venules that are compromised in the circulatory system. Talking further about the integumentary system, that is the skin. So the common term integument has been used for the anatomy of the tvak, that is the skin, and its derivatives like the kesha, loma, nakha, and the sweda granthi, that is the sweat glands, and also the shleshmala granthi, which we could say as the mucus glands. So in Ayurveda, the term tvak is used as sparshanendriya, that is the organ for touch and to feel other things like temperature, etc. And in Ayurveda, the development of tvak has been compared with the formation of thick skim that appears on the surface of a boiled cooled milk in a pot. So this reference is told as Kshirasyeva Santanikaha. So in the same way, we have the formation of the tvak in the embryonic life. When we see the Rachana or the anatomy of the tvak, Acharya Charaka has enumerated 6 layers only, whereas Acharya Sushruta has enumerated 7 layers of skin or the tvacha. But both Charaka and Acharya Sushruta have identified certain diseases, skin diseases, which involve these layers. So it is very important that Acharyas also had sound knowledge of not only the very minute anatomy of the skin, but they also knew what kind of skin diseases could originate from which layer of the skin probably, and its references and its explanations have also been given when under the explanations of all of this. So they have also talked about the quantum of thickness of all of these layers, and the unit they have chosen to measure the thickness is the size of a vrihi. Vrihi, that is the size of a rice grain. So in reference to the 7 layers by Acharya Sushruta says, तासां प्रथमा अवभासिनी नाम या सर्वान् वर्णान् अवभासयति पंचविधा च छायां प्रकाशयति स व्रीहि 18 भाग प्रमाण सिद्म पद्म कंटकादि कंटक अधिष्ठानम्. So this is how Acharya explain each of these layers and also explain the diseases that could happen or that could originate from that particular layer. So the second layer was Acharya has named it as Lohita, the third Shweta, fourth Tamra, fifth Vedini, sixth Rohini, and the Mamsadhara. To correlate all of this with modern knowledge, with the current modern anatomical knowledge, we could say Avabhasini was referred to the horny layer, Lohita to the stratum lucidum, Shweta to the stratum granulosum, Tamra to Malpighian layer, Vedini to papillary layer, Rohini to reticular layer, and the Mamsadhara to the subcutaneous tissue and the muscle layer. So this is how Acharyas have also explained the anatomy of the minute skin, splitting up the structure of skin into 7 layers and explaining its lakshana and also talking about the disease process. Moving further in according to the anatomical knowledge about the koshta, koshtangas and the ashaya sharira. So it is nothing but the visceras in the body cavity. So in Ayurveda, the term koshta and ashaya have been used in the reference to cavity and the vital organs that are present in the Madhya Sharira. The term Ashaya has been used for cavities like sac or that of a bladder, and the Ayurveda also has used the body cavity, or it is considered body cavity as one of the part of the Shadanga Sharira, that is the Antaradhi or the Madhya Sharira, and it is the name coined for the term trunk, what we call in as a main part of the human body. So here we have the Antaradhi or the Madhya Sharira, that is the trunk. It includes 2 cavities, that is we have the Ura Guha and the Udara Guha, that is the thorax or the thorax and the Udara Guha, that is the abdominal cavity. So both these parts are upper and lower cavities of the trunk, that is the Madhya Sharira or the Antaradhi. So even Acharya Charaka opines that the Antaradhi or the Madhya Sharira, it comprises of the two parts, that is the Uroguha, thoracic cavity, and the Udara Guha, that is the abdominal cavity. So even the other great Ayurvedic anatomists like Bhela, Kashyapa and Acharya Vagbhata, all of them have used the terms Uroguha and Udara Guha, and they have used it in term with reference to the Koshtanga. So Acharya Sushruta has clearly explained what are the different parts that are present in the Koshta. He says, Sthanani Amagni Pakwana Mutrasya Rudirasya cha Hrut Undukaha Puppusascha Koshta Ityabhidiyate. That is, he identifies Amashaya for stomach, Agnyashaya for pancreas, Pakvashaya for large intestine, Mutrashaya for urinary bladder, Rudirashaya for spleen, Hridaya for heart, Unduka for cecum, and Puppusa to lungs, and these are the organs that are present in the Koshta. So Acharya Charaka has also identified the term Koshta with Mahasrotas, and he also says that this Koshta is a Mahanimna and it is a bigger Ashaya which gives siege to all of these organs in the Madhya Sharira, that is the Antaradhi. Moving further with respect to the study of bones, that is the anatomy of bones, that is osteology, Ayurveda believes that Asti develops by the Asti Dhatuvagni, and Asti Dhatu is dominated by Agni, Vayu and the Prithvi Mahabhuta. So it has properties of Gurutva, Kharatva, Khatinata, Sthulata, Sthirata and Murtimantata. So these are the properties of Asti Dhatu. And that which we can say that Asti is nothing but the bone which is made up of organic matrix, and it develops strength by the calcium salts according to modern anatomy. The human skeleton is symmetrically bilateral and it has an axis with a vertebral pattern. So it has two pairs of osteological structures, that is the Urdhva and the Adho Bahu, that is the upper limbs and the lower limbs, the pectoral and the pelvic girdles with joint parts of for locomotion, grasping, power. When the cranial end of this axis is expanded into the that is the Shira Pradesha, and whereas among these, some of these bones also develop into Kandara. Kandara are nothing but, we could call it as tendons, and Snayu, that is the ligaments. So all of these parts are collectively termed as Asti Kankala, which is nothing but the skeletal structure. And this Asti Kankala is Mamsa Lipta, and it is internal to the Mamsa Peshi, that is the muscles by which it is converted. So now therefore we could say that these are the endoskeletal part. Looking up to the explanation of the shape of bones that has been spoken about under the Asti Sharira. So though the human bones are basically tubular in structure, Srotas-like, that is hollow and with the elongated structure, they vary in shape according to the location and the need. So Acharya Sushruta had identified this change in structure of the bone, and he has named them according to their shape. Etani panchavidhani bhavanti tadyata kapala ruchaka taruna valaya nalaka sangnani cha iti. And he has also says, he also gives examples of which type of bone could be considered under each of these shape. So Kapala, we could consider it to be the flat bones, Ruchaka, the teeth, the socket kind of bones, Taruna, cartilages, Valaya, round bones, and Nalaka, long bones. So under each of these he gives examples, like for under Kapala Asti, we have the Janu, that is the bones of the knee joint, Shroni, of that of the pelvis, Amsa, that is the scapula, Ganda, that is the cheek, Talu, that is the palate, Shanka, temple region of the skull, Shira, that is the head, that is the Kapala, the vault. The Ruchakasti, that is the Danta, Tarunasti are cartilages that we find in the nasal cavity, and also in the ear and in the neck area. Also in the orbital region, Valayasti, which are found in the Parshva, that is in the lateral, in the Prishta, in the back, and in the Urus, that is in the chest. And the rest of the bones are Nalakasti, that are the long bones, is the explanation given by Acharya Sushruta. Acharya also says that, he gives an analogy saying that the human body stands like a tree which stands with the support of the Mamsa Peshi, that is the muscles, and it gets destroyed by the passing of time. That is why it is called as Sharira. But Acharya says bones do not get destroyed as they are solid parts of the body. The Mamsapesha are attached to the bones. Here is the definite. Here is one of the reference of how Acharya also knew the muscular attachment, the insertion points of the muscles too, the attaching areas of the muscles too. So as Acharya in the same context, he also says the Mamsapesha are attached to the bones with the help of Snayu. Snayu are nothing but the ligaments and the blood vessels. So, and Acharya in the same context, he also says that is the reason why the muscular attachments are not loose and they do not fall off the body when in various postures, because they are fixed to the bones with the help of Snayu, that is the ligament. And because of the solidity of the muscle or of the bones will not get destroyed even after it is buried under the earth, because of the Katina Bhavata and the Kharatva, the features of the bone. That is the predominance of the Prithvi Mahabhuta. Talking about the number of body bones that Acharyas have explained in Ayurveda Shastra. So two different Ayurvedic schools of anatomy have described the total number of human bones in two different ways, depending upon their discipline of medicine, whether it was looked upon by a physician or a surgeon group. So the Vedic persons were basically physicians, and therefore they took into account 360 bones in human body, whereas the surgeons have counted and given the number of 300 bones in human body. So we have 117 in the Shroni, that is the pelvis, Parshva, that is the flanks, Prishta in the back, and Ura in the chest, and 63 above the Griva, that is the neck region. Thus total 300 bones in number. If we look into Atharvana Veda, the number of bones that are given in are also 360, and the same number is also mentioned according to Yajnavalkya Smriti. So in Charaka Samhita also, and also in Ashtanga Sangraha, Kashyapa Samhita, the number of bones that are enumerated are also again 360, whereas Acharya Sushruta gives the opinion of 300 bones. Now, even coming to the number given by the modern anatomist, it is 206 bones. So coming to where this change in counting could have had happened, some of the reasons could be counting those structures which are actually not bones, like the nail, the teeth, etc. Counting even the bones which are not actually bones, like for example the teeth sockets. Okay. Inclusion of those structures which appear similar to bones, they are actually not bones, like for example cartilages. Counting separately those part of bones, for example the number of Parshuka, that is the ribs, that has been mentioned as 36 on each side of the thorax by counting 12 ribs, 12 tubercles and 12 facets of every rib as separate parts of the rib. Counting 12 vertebral processes separately. Dissection facilities were not available to such an extent wherein there could be certain changes in counting with respect to counting of the bones, and also that Acharya had counted, there could have also been chances of counting those bones before ossification in the younger phase of life. So non-ossified bony masses could be another reason. Because of all of these reasons, we could see that, or we could guess that that is why there is a difference in the number of bones according to modern anatomy and the Ayurveda Sharira Rachana. There is also knowledge on the arthrology, that is the Sandhi Sharira. So we know that when two bones join together or come together in the same place, then that portion is called as articulation, wherein one structure articulates with the other. So all such joining points of Asti are known as Sandhi in Ayurveda. So it is this Sandhi that are responsible for the transmission of forces and are also responsible for the movement production. So the science of Sandhi Sharira in modern language is known as arthrology, and in Ayurveda it is called as Sandhi Sharira. So when more than two bones meet together, then it is termed as Sanghata or Sandhi. According to Acharya Charaka, he says Asti Samyogaha Sthanam Sandhihi. So that part of in the body where two bones meet is called as Sandhi, wherein Acharya Sharangadhara has given the following definition for sandhi saying sandayascha anga sandhanat dehe proktaha kafanvitaha. This means that wherever the two body parts join with the help of shleshma or kapha, then that part is called as the joint. Acharya Sushruta has defined the term sandhi as a point where any similar type of two structures meet together, like either the asti, where two asti meet, it is called as the asti sandhi, where two sira meet, where it is called as the sira sandhi, and where the peshi meet, that is the muscular joint. So these are few varieties of sandhi or articulations that Acharya Sushruta has explained in the human body, and Acharya Sushruta has also identified asti sandhi functionally into two forms, that is he calls it as cheshtatvan and sthira sandhi. So he says there are sandhi which are movable and there are sandhi which are immovable. Saying so, he says shakasu hanvoho katyam cha cheshtavantuhu cheshtavantam चेष्टावन्तं तु सन्देहः शेषास्तु सन्देहः सर्वे विज्ञेयाः अस्थिरा बुधैः. So this means that in movable joints we have movable joints in the shaka, that is the limb, hanu, that is the temporomandibular joint, and in the kati, that is the intervertebral region, and all others are fixed. So here there are a few exceptions, like though the hanu sandhi is in the kapalasti, but it is a movable joint, though it is in the Shira Pradesha. So such minute exceptions are also to be seen in the explanations. Next, moving with respect to the physiology of that helps in easy articulation or easy moving of the sandhi. So it is the fluid that facilitates the movement of articular surface of the joint, which avoids rubbing of bony surfaces. For this, Acharya Sushruta has said sandhistastu shleshma sarvasandhi samshleshat sarvasandhyanugraham karoti. So in this reference, Acharya Sushruta has stated that it is the shleshma that is present in the sandhi which is responsible for easy movement, which can be very nicely correlated to the synovial structure or the membrane along with the fluid, etc., that are present in the between the joints. Talking further about the classification of movable joint, Acharya Sushruta has given 8 types of movable joints, that is Kora Sandhi. Like example, he says Kora Sandhi is present in like the Kurpara Sandhi in the elbow joint, Manibandha, that is the wrist, Gulfa, ankle joint, and in the Janu Sandhi, that is the knee joint. We have the Ulukala Sandhi that are present in the shoulder, in the Vangshana, that is the hip, in the Dashana, that is the teeth, Samudga Sandhi, which is present in Amsapita, that is the acromioclavicular joint, Guda, anus, Bhaga, vaginal region, Nitamba in the gluteal region, Pratara Sandhi, it is present in the Griva, cervical, and in the Prushta that is the back region. Tunna Sevani Sandhi, the Sandhi which are present in Shirobhaga, that is the head, and the Kati Bhaga, lumbar, and the Kapala Bhaga, that is the cranium. Vaisatunda Sandhi, temporomandibular joint like. Mandala Sandhi, present in the Kantha, tracheal rings, Hridaya, heart, and in the Netra. Shankavarta, they are found in the Shrotra, that is the ears, and in the Shrungataka. So, to correlate this with the modern anatomical knowledge, the Kora Sandhi referring to the hinge joint, Ulukala Sandhi referring to the ball and socket joint, Samudga Sandhi to the pivot joint, Pratara Sandhi sutural joint, Tunna Sevani to suture, Vaisatunda to temporomandibular joint, Mandala to intervertebral joint, and Shankavarta to circular joint like plates of external acoustic meatus. So further, Acharya Sushruta has also said that above mentioned types are only concerned with bony joints, whereas we also have joints between the peshi, snayu, and the sira, that is with respect to the muscles, ligaments, and also the veins. So Acharya also has given a comment on the anastomosis or the articular surfaces of these structures too. Moving further with respect to the knowledge on the Kala Sharira, that is the limiting membrane. So in Ayurveda, Kala are referred to of being 7 in number, and they have been identified as limiting membranes. So they are the innermost lining of various body visceras, and according to Acharya Sushruta, kala are sheath-like structures that are enveloped by shleshma or the mucoidal material. Shleshmana veshtitam chapi kala bhagastu tan viduhu. So they have been recognized as the innermost linings of the dhatu, that is the tissue, or the ashayas, that is the body cavity. In modern anatomical knowledge, these could be termed as the mucous membrane, and the epithelium are those linings or layers of cell which cover the tissue surfaces and all body cavities opening on it. So embryologically, if we see, epitheliums are derived from all the 3 germinal cells, and they are the mesothelic cell layers that are lining the internal cavities and the proximal part of the urogenital tract linings. So they line the pericardial, pleural and the peritoneal cavities, and endotheliums are those lining which line the blood vessels and the lymphatics. So as said above, Acharya Sushruta identified these lining or the layers of the visceras and structures as kala. So the first kala is the Mamsadhara kala. So within this kala we have the network of sira, that is the vein, and the snayu, that is the fibrous tissue, and the dhamani, that is what we saw, that could be correlated to the arteries which are spread within the first kala, that is the Mamsadhara kala. So this type of kala can be compared with the intermuscular septa, or in cases like muscle like fascia transversalis or fascia and transverse iliaca, wherein all of these could be considered as the limiting membrane with respect to that of the muscle tissue. Then we have the Raktadhara kala as the second Dhara kala, and these could be compared to the endothelial lining of the artery, veins and lymphatics. In such case, we also have the third, that is the Medodhara kala, and the fourth, that is the Shleshmadhara kala, the fifth, that is the Purishadhara kala, and we have the sixth kala, that is the Pittadhara kala, and the seventh, that is the and the last, that is the Shukradhara kala. So 7 such kalas were explained, not just based on their anatomical location but also based on their function. Moving on with the knowledge of muscles and the muscular structure in Ayurveda, so that is studied as Mamsa Dhatu and Mamsa Peshi, wherein Mamsa Dhatu is made up of Mamsa Peshi. Mamsa Dhatu grows by myocytes, that is, if we consider Mamsa Dhatu as the muscular entity, so it is that which grows by myocytes. Myocytes are the functional unit, the cell units of the muscles, and the moderners have classified Mamsa Peshi into 3, that is, we have the skeletal muscles, the cardiac muscles and the smooth muscles. Acharya Sushruta has enumerated 500 peshi, that is muscle, in the whole human body, and out of them 400 peshi are available in the shakha, that is the upper and lower extremities. In koshta, 66 muscles are present and 34 muscles are present above the jatrurdhva, that is the clavicle. So the number of muscles that are allotted by Acharya Sushruta to different parts of human body is very much nearer to the number given by modern anatomists, and the total number of muscles according to Ayurveda is 500, whereas moderners give a number of very close, which is very close to 500, that is 519 different muscles have been explained by the modern anatomists. So there is a difference of only 19 muscles between Acharya's explanation and the modern knowledge of the anatomy of muscles. So not just that, Acharya Sushruta has not just given numbers of each of these, that is jatrurdhva, in the shakha, etc., but in each of these areas or different zones of body, what are the number of or what are the varieties of muscles that are present, and Acharya has also given names to all of this, like just to name a few, like he has said that each padanguli has 3 peshi. Padanguli is nothing but the toe, thus 15 peshi are there in all the 5 toes. The prapada, that is the interior part of the foot, has 10. The extensor surface, that is the pada, that is the dorsum of the foot, has the same number. Gulfa bhaga and the pada tala, that is the ankle and the sole, have 10 muscles, etc. So like this, each and every part or the zone of the human body has been explained with the number of muscles that are taking either an origin or an attachment to the bone at that part of the body. So along with this, as we discussed earlier, there are also enumerations on the Marma Sharira, on the Indriya Sharira, etc., wherein Acharya has given dedicated an entire section of the Samhita to the knowledge of anatomy or the knowledge of the Sharira, etc. And that is why Ayurveda opines that Sharire Chaiva Shastre Cha Drushtartam Syad Visharadha Drishta Shrutabhyam Sandeham Vapohyo Charet Kriya. So Shruta Sharira, 5th chapter. Quoting this shloka from Sushruta Samhita Sharira Sthana, I would like to end this session throwing light on the importance of the knowledge of anatomy. Acharyas have laid throughout the Samhitas, not just Acharya Sushruta, even Acharya Charaka has given lots of importance on the study of anatomy and physiology, and that the knowledge of anatomy of human body forms the integral part of the Ayurveda Shastra. In the further sessions, we will further move on with the various surgical techniques and forms that have been discussed in the Sushruta Samhita. Thank you.